Hello and a big warm welcome to my special guest today, Elle Wood. How are you doing?
Hi, thanks for having me.
Elle Wood, and I think on this occasion, I mean, we are old friends, but I think I should introduce you by your full title, which is estate agent trainer, well-being coach, and founder of the Estate Agent Social Media.
That's me.
And that's where people know you from. And estate agents and social media, maybe we'll start with that first. There's a lot of debate as to whether or not an agent needs to be on all the portals, some of the portals, where they get exposure. Surely by now, at this point in 2022, there is no debate that agents need to be firmly embedded in social media, though.
I think for some people it's still not the forefront of their minds, but that's that's up to them. It's all horses for courses, isn't it? A bit like you say about which portal should we be on, if they feel things are rumbling along well enough without, then so be it. But I think the majority of people would understand that it's just ubiquitous nowadays. It's unavoidable. I don't think there's a single business that's not on social media, estate agency or not.
And just like estate agent, well, any kind of estate agent marketing that becomes ubiquitous, there's good versions of it and some very bad versions of it. Why is it that we as estate agents sometimes struggle to get our message across in a way that the public can understand?
I think sometimes we are a bit insular, because of the sort of work you do, you're sort of in that world, and you forget that there's other ways of doing things and other ways of seeing things, and you forget how to speak other than in the jargon, because it's what you do all day every day, and you just get into ruts. I think that's a key thing is not having that eternal student mentality where actually you're quite unblinkered. You just go to work, you do your job, you go home. And also I think in sales, your salespeople, you want immediate results. God damn it. And you're used to ABC equals D. I follow the process and I get the same results. And of course, marketing's not like that. It's a little bit more, I don't know, I can't even think of the word. It's a little bit more existential. You can't always go, if I do this, the algorithm will do this, and therefore this is the outcome. You don't always get that sort of reliability. So I think you don't get an immediate result, and you haven't got that process behind it that definitely will work.
And it's anybody that's expecting instant results from things like social media marketing, let's face it, social media marketing needs to be a long-term play. You cannot just expect to switch it on and then after a week suddenly see all those leads come in. There is an element of nurture to the whole communication with your audience that, done well, takes time but makes a massive impact.
Definitely. I think it's like any company. Coca-Cola didn't launch and then everyone was buying Coca-Cola. They're still one of the biggest names in the world, but they still continue to advertise, because you've got to keep putting yourself at the top of people's mind, and that top of the mind awareness is only formed through a drip, and trust is developed in drips and lost in buckets. And if you constantly show up and you're constantly saying, we're the good guys, we're the good guys, we're the good guys, then eventually people go, oh, they're the good guys. There was a study done that people walked past strangers in the street, and at the end of the week, the researchers said, who do you trust more? The person you only saw today, or the person you've seen every single day walk past you in the street? And the study showed that even though that person is still a stranger, because we're familiar with them, we'd actually trust them, even though the only thing that's happened is we walk past them in the street. And that's the same with social media and any marketing. You keep showing up, you keep showing up, you keep showing up, you become reliable, you become expected, you become someone that shows up when they say they do. If you invite someone to a party repeatedly and they never turn up, you stop inviting them, because we can't take that level of rejection. We want reliability, we want our expectations to be met. And I think that's where social media can be really useful, because you're catching them unawares. They're just sat scrolling, they're relaxing, they're bored, you know, they're procrastinating. And you just keep showing up saying nice things that are kind of helpful.
So talking of nice people that are kind of helpful, we always ask for USPs or particular stats from our webinar guests, and you fill in a form, and we asked you for your USP, and you said, I don't know, just that I'm approachable and vaguely pleasant. Now, as somebody that's known you for a while, I think we could probably stretch a little bit more than vaguely pleasant. I think you're doing all right. But that I think anybody that's seen any of your content, the first thing that sort of strikes them is that sort of smiling face. I've never seen you sort of downhearted or downplaying it. And I think that is the constant persona that I've seen when you marketed properties for your own agency back in the UK, and obviously when you're producing content for other people now. That should be second nature to people, but it's sometimes something that we all forget. And you know, I asked somebody the other day, so how's work going? And they said, oh, I manage 100 people, so it doesn't matter how work's going, I always need to turn up with a smile. And I said, that must be difficult. And he said, well, you're not going to sell many houses if you don't turn up with a smile saying, market's great, we can help you. And that really is, you set your stall out with social media to help you to do that. But you get that message across very quickly, don't you? That positivity.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, it's not true. You only have to ask my husband, you know, I'm bloody hard work. I cry an awful lot and I'm extraordinarily moody, but that doesn't matter for my clients, and it doesn't matter. And it's exactly what your friend said, you know, it doesn't matter to your house sellers. If you're having a bad day, you've got to show up, you've got to do what needs to be done. And I think that's the joy of social media, is that especially if you palm it off onto someone else, that consistency and that reliability just ticks away in the background without you having to put on the face or pretend or, you know, find it within yourself. I think that can be really, really beneficial to just go, you deal with it.
So the actual chosen title for this webinar was Estate Agency and the Pyramid of Success. So talk to us about that pyramid of success, and if you could, I'd like to talk about your services and how you sort of literally take the problem that agents have and kind of go away and deal with it for them, so they don't need to sort of sit up at night wondering what it is they should be doing.
Yeah, definitely. That's certainly the bit I'm trying to remove, because it's all doable. It's just finding the person that can help. So the pyramid of success is, at the top here is digital marketing, right? That's the pinnacle. And that's what we've just been saying, that actually is really, really important and there's no getting away from it. But it's only that much of the pyramid. Because if I'm bringing you in leads from your digital marketing, if you haven't got a process in place to deal with those leads, it doesn't make any damn difference if those leads are high quality, no quality, if they come tomorrow, if they come next year, because you haven't got any way of dealing with them. So what I discovered was, even though I was training people on social media and training them how to do it and all this, that, and the other, and then in the end doing it for them, without some process training underneath that, it was all for naught, because it looks like my digital marketing services don't work, when actually it's the next step that needs to work. But on top of that, especially after COVID, the bottom of the pyramid, which is the base and the foundation, is that if I give you all the leads, which I'm not promising leads, but if I give you that consistent, reliable showing up on social media from your digital marketing, I then train your team or you and show you how we did it. It's not the only way, it's not the best way, but the way we did it. If you don't feel great and you haven't really got your life goals in place, your values aren't there, and you know you're pretty miserable, and I don't know, simple things like you're not drinking enough water, then it doesn't matter how good my training is. It doesn't matter how good my digital marketing is. If your well-being isn't the foundation, then none of it's going to get done. And I think COVID, in a way, helped people realize that the importance of mental health and the importance of looking after themselves. And I'm not talking about that kind of toxic positivity where everything's great and everything's totally achievable, because you know what, sometimes stuff isn't achievable. And that's when people like, I think Rob Brady would come into play, because actually he's a step above, beyond me. He's a qualified counsellor. So actually, if you're getting into the realms of mental health, I would signpost you to other places, because, you know, I don't have any of those qualifications other than a knowledge of needing to signpost when appropriate. But I think there is a lot of well-being stuff that is around mindset shifts. And I retrained last year as an NLP practitioner, which is neuro-linguistic programming, timeline therapy and hypnotherapy, to help people unblock some of those sort of trauma-based things that we have in our brains that are holding us back, when actually, if we can remove them, we're letting ourselves move forward. Then we'll carry out the processes properly. Then the digital marketing will work. And I think that's why it's a pyramid of success.
So when you talk about NLP, and there's a lot of, I suppose, there's a lot of mystique around these sort of things. Does it work? Does it not work? And I think it's probably been proven over time to be quite effective. The language that we use day to day, both to describe ourselves and also to address our customers, we need to be very careful with that in terms of the effect that it can then have. Could you give us, I'm putting you on the spot here, but could you give us some examples of how an agent might wish to address an audience and things to avoid?
Yeah, definitely. Answering the phone. Good morning, wants to stay self speaking. How can I help? Don't do that. Sound like you care. I know it's really boring because we have to say it 1,000 times a day, but actually, if someone walked into the room and you went, "Good afternoon, it's the States and I'm speaking, how can I help?" You'd be incredibly rude. So why do we do it on the phone? Instead, take a breath. Good afternoon. You've come through to Orchards Estates. My name is Elle. How can I help? Because so often I have no idea who I'm speaking to when I'm mystery shopping people, because it doesn't make any sense. So you're already putting a boundary in place. You're putting a barrier in place because you sound bored, you sound disinterested, you don't sound particularly welcoming. Should I get you booked in for an MA? Is a question I get asked when I'm mystery shopping people. What's an MA, people? Unless you're in the industry, it's not a useful term to use. Instead, can we come out and help you? You know, would not take valuation of your property be useful for you? There's so many tiny little tweaks that you can make that make a massive difference to the person you're speaking to, and therefore actually remove obstacles and make your job easier. And as far as I'm concerned, that's the point of it all, because if you follow the process, wrap your personality around it, you should be able to get the sort of success that we experience, because that's all we did. Rinse and repeat. We did the basics brilliantly. And I think those type of word switches can make that huge difference. And it's the same, as you mentioned, when you're talking to yourself about yourself. So I get really nervous before I'm coming on to do something like this, because it's a bit of stage fright, isn't it? Am I going to say the wrong thing? Am I going to look like a Wally? Am I going to swear accidentally when I don't want to? And when you start feeling that anxiety come, using a technique from NLP called pattern interrupt can mean that actually you don't feed into that emotion, because feelings aren't facts. And you can say delete, 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 or shut up, or stop, stop, or something like that. And you just get that break where you can pause and regroup and carry on.
So it is fascinating, because I think so much about an agent's ability to communicate with their audience but get their message across. Sometimes we make the mistake of assuming that these are people that think about moving house every day, because we do. It's the world that we live in. Everybody wakes up, wonders what their house is worth and how can they move and who are they going to move with. But to most of the world, it really isn't something that bothers them every day. It's something that they have to deal with every, I don't know, depending on who you talk to, 10 years, 12 years, there is an average to these things, but it's not an everyday process, and therefore to bamboozle them with jargon they're not going to understand doesn't make you actually seem any more professional just because you're using certain terminology. Sometimes you actually need to translate that into human speak, really.
Exactly. And Chris Watkins always says it as well. Chris Watkins, I always put an S on the end. Sorry, Chris.
I do. There are many S's on the end of his name. Don't worry about it.
There are. He always says in the writing that we do, stop talking about what we can do. So we are the best agent in the area. We will value your house. We. Instead, talk about your client. You might be feeling this. Don't worry. That's fairly normal. Do the feel, felt, found. Even when you're writing, even when you're doing, so I write web copy for people for their websites. And instead of saying we, try and make it about the other person. It's much more interesting. People are ultimately selfish. Everyone wants to know about me. What do I feel? So if you're saying something that connects with them, you're again showing that human side, that and you're demonstrating that you're not the evil estate agent, that you actually have some, or letting agent, both, that you have some empathy, that you give a damn, and you're showing it rather than we do great customer service. Who doesn't? Don't be so silly. Use your words better.
And when it comes to being an agent, we are forced to wear so many different hats. So when you're dealing with the public, you are part salesperson, you're also part therapist, you are sometimes a friend, you are sometimes a trusted advisor. You flip, you're a marketeer, you're dealing with their marketing, you're doing your own marketing. There's so many different hats that we have to wear that sometimes you cannot be depending on your team and your structure, you just can't be all things to all people. And it makes sense to sort of hit the pause button and say, Elle, I'd like it done for me. So let's talk about that process and how you sort of make sure that is tailored to the agent's needs. So if I'm that agent and it's getting a little bit too much for me, I am feeling a bit guilty, I'm not doing enough with my social media, all you're seeing is house for sale, house for sale, house for sale, but you're not getting any message through. Where do I start? What's the process with Elle?
To work with me to help sort that out? Well, yeah. I mean, it starts from £50 a month, because actually for some agents, if you're only starting out, or you're a one-man band or one-woman band or one non-binary band, then it doesn't really help if I've got options that are £1,000 a month, because you're not going to see the return on your investment. But there's lots of different layers, lots of different ways throughout that. So the way that we can't think of the word, the way that we action our social media is the 5E content approach. And we talk about these 5Es because it's a simplified version of something that's super complicated. So the first thing we do is we start with empathy, which is what I've just been talking about. We, us, you, them. How can we talk to the people that are most likely to be your ideal clients? And how can we think about what they might be feeling, what they might be needing, and what they might be interested in? We don't approach social media like a Rightmove portal. I don't think it needs to be sale house, or letting house. It's kind of tedious. But if you start with empathy and you think about that individual, think about your ideal client, even if it's an amalgamation of lots of different people, think about them and just reduce the overwhelm for yourself. Again, comes back to your well-being. If you're overwhelmed, you won't do any of it. So just think of that one person. So we start with empathy. From there, we can then educate them, because we can think, well, actually, like you said, they might not have moved for 10 years. So what don't they know? What do they need to know? What are they worrying about that we could easily and quickly, in 250 words, say something helpful? Entertain them. Let's remember that we are human, they are human. Also, it's great for engagement. If something's funny, it's more likely to get shared, which the algorithms prefer. So that works well. And also it reduces those boundaries. It removes those barriers to say, actually, we're not bad people. We're normal people like you. Empowerment is the fourth one, and it's just an E word because I needed an E for inspire. So everyone's been raving lately, or a little bit ago, about Bridgerton. So even if you haven't got any Regency style homes in your area, I might be living in a new build, but actually I love Bridgerton. So a little piece on social media about how to get the Regency period in my house, that's interesting to me. It's slightly inspiring. And it doesn't matter if I'm not thinking of moving, I still find that content interesting. What new colours are coming out, what plants work well in different rooms, all those sorts of women's magazine type articles. Once you've done those 4 E's, then you've earned the right to e-promote. Because if I buy a women's magazine, I'm buying it for the articles, but there are adverts in between. But when you only post adverts, I'm not going to buy the magazine, I'm not going to follow your Facebook page. If it's just house for sale, unless you're in like a really luxury market where the houses are so aspirational, most of us don't work in those areas. Most of us work in 3-bed semi-land.
Correct.
And they're not that exciting to look at time and time again.
And that's the issue with if you run your agency like any kind of product-led advertising where it's just, this is the 3-bed semi I have for sale right now at this figure. If you're not interested in that, you're just going to scroll past it. Whereas general interest articles, you're bound to get a little bit more traction because it applies to somebody whether they're thinking of selling or not. They might just have an interest in it.
Yeah, exactly. And thinking about Facebook, that gives you something to share to local groups. So you're getting your name out there, the algorithm sees the content being shared, but it's not salesy, it's interesting. And you've got to be careful with that because you've got to do it all within the rules of the group and everything like that. But it just gives an extra element of interest, shows that you're a human and shows that you give a damn about the people in front of you. We've done it since 2014 when we opened Orchards Estates. We repeated it here in Spain with our agency here, and that kind of marketing mix is so effective. It's really surprising to me that more people haven't cottoned onto it because it's not that challenging to achieve, but it's all time.
And we're lucky. We're lucky because you are, you know, if you're opening an estate agency business today, or even if it's an old business but you want to sort of reestablish its web presence or get its personality out there, in the old days there were only specific conduits that you had to do that. So everybody started with that advert in the yellow pages, so that if anybody was flicking through looking for an estate agent, you'd be there. And then you start with newspaper advertising, but the space is extremely precious, so you don't waste it talking about yourself. You only put your clients' properties in there, and then you don't have the ability to get across that message. And I believe that in that sort of vacuum where you don't have the ability to get your voice or that trustworthiness across to a public, then that's why we ended up with the reputation that we did, because all that we ever got an opportunity to do was very crudely sell, sell, sell. And today we're living in the golden age. You can get that message across in so many different ways, and you don't need to be hard sell to get to your audience. It's amazing.
And also the audience is a lot more savvy because of the amount of content out there. I mean, in the 30s, they used to say that it took 7 different touch points for someone to buy from you. But now they think it could be over 20 because there's so many more platforms, there's so much more content available. So I think you've got to try and take advantage of that as much as you can. A lot of estate agents or letting agents aren't ready yet to embrace things like TikTok. But if I was in the UK, that's exactly what I would be doing. Because that's your next generation that are going to come through. Also, TikTok might have Chinese spies on it, so the future remains to be seen for that. But
if you're in the market looking for Chinese spies, then there's no better place to be. Let's stay with, and we'll end on this if you don't mind. A lot of your focus, although you say you do use signposting, but a lot of your focus is about sort of mindset, but it's also focusing on almost self-care and making sure that we're not just automatic drones that are out there from 9 till 7 without taking a break, without drinking water, without getting lunch in, without just sort of sitting and processing and having somebody else to feed back with. This all sort of feeds off the idea that mental health, if not managed correctly, can actually cost a business a vast amount of money in terms of sick days and so on. We're sat here and it's very much the topic of the day because of what has happened after the pandemic. But let's face it, our industry's always had those challenges from our workload, the highs and the lows and the, you know, and we've come a long way. We've still got loads to go.
Very true. Very true. I mean, there's all sorts of different support out there now. And I think businesses are wising up to the fact that it affects their bottom line if they don't look after people. Now, I was really blessed because my boss, he would never use any of these terms, but he naturally helped us look after our well-being and things like that. He drove us really bloody hard as well, and we were working 12-hour days, no breaks built in. But there were loads of other things that he did do to make sure that we were looked after. And I think that lots of bosses aren't that tapped in and not that educated on it for themselves, let alone to then be able to pass it on. But I think there are changes being made, Agents Together, the mentoring program for one, and people like me that are around as well if you need something extra.
It's you know what, that is the best thing, that there is choice, and that if you're looking for assistance, or you're looking for somebody to help you with your marketing, or a trainer, or somebody that's just going to give you that inspiration, you can pick the style and also the things that are important to you. We now have, you know, more than ever before, but there's something there for everybody, isn't there?
Absolutely. It's an awesome smorgasbord. There's just a menu of people out there. And I think, again, for me, that comes down to social media and tech and this type of thing, where actually it doesn't matter where you are in the country, you can access those people without having to drive to their office for a meeting. We can all take what we need, and that choice can be overwhelming as well. So sometimes you just have to bite the bullet and suck it and see with someone. But other than that, I think it's very exciting.
Give Elle a go. I highly recommend it. People are raving about her service. I've seen a lot of your content online, and it's certainly very impressive. And if I take time to read it, I imagine some other people do as well. So really nice to have you with us. Thank you so much. All your details are on kerfuffle.com, and we will talk to you again.
Thank you for having me.